This is Chidanand from Kratz Infotech NG, and I welcome you to this video session on CKAD exam preparation tips. Certified Kubernetes Application Developer Exam Preparation Tips. Mind you, I repeat, it's exam preparation tips, not exam passing tips. As in my opinion, there are no shortcuts to clearing this exam other than completely being hands-on and trying out lot of exercises. However, there are a lot of questions that get asked to me whenever I go ahead and train people or wherever I go in my consulting role and meet people. Once they get to hear that I am a certified CKAD professional, the same set of questions gets repeated, wherein people want to know how is this exam conducted at house, what are the possible ways in which one can prepare for the exam, what is the syllabus, and what are the typical questions that can get asked in the exam, and also more questions from Indian continent where people are more worried about once I have the exam running, what if there's a power failure, what if there is a network outage, how is that taken care of. So considering all this, I just thought let me make a video which details out all these aspects of what is this exam all about, what are the syllabus, what are the typical questions that can get asked in the exam. Mind you, as a part of our non-disclosure agreement, I'm not really supposed to reveal the exact questions that get asked, but most of the questions are very similar, or the scenarios that get asked in the exam is very similar to few scenarios. So probably I'll try to cover all that, and also in the end I'll give you a little bit of a tips about how to go about preparing for this exam, what books to refer, what are the quick tips that will help you to save lot of time, because in this exam time is very precious. You have about 19 questions to answer in about 2 hours of time, and the more time you spend on working with your YML or messing up your YML and trying to fix it, it works very bad for you. So there are a few quick tips that will help you to figure out how to get the exact settings that you're looking out for, how to do your YML formatting correctly, how to have, if possible, multiple terminals opened up for you so that you can quicken up few things and stuff like that. Probably I'll cover that at the end of this video. But this is what is in store for you today. If you navigate to the CNCF, which is the Cloud Native Computing Foundation homepage, under the certification section, you will find two certifications that is primarily targeting individuals. One is the Certified Kubernetes Administrator, and the other one is the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. Now, if your job is more towards the operational part of Kubernetes, if you're responsible for setting up the cluster, configuring your cluster with some storage, or setting up the services or the networking part of your cluster, or setting up your applications with some signing authority, all the operational part of your cluster, if at all you're involved with that, you're better off by picking up CKA. But if you're more from the application side, your job is building applications, pods, configuring a lot of pods, injecting pods with various parameters and using them inside the pod, having multiple container pods and stuff like that, you would probably want to look at the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. As of this recording, the latest version of Kubernetes for the certification perspective is 1.18. So if you look at the certification section of it, there are all details provided about the syllabus, as to what is the nature of the exam and what is covered, what are the weightages for various concepts from the perspective of Kubernetes. Syllabus is all laid out here. So let me quickly go through the curriculum overview. CKAD 1.18. This keeps getting updated. So as of today, this is the latest version that is available. All right. I'll just quickly go through what kind of questions you can possibly expect from the examination perspective. So the 13% weightage is on the core concepts, which is exactly understanding how to run pods. How do you define a pod? What are the configurations that you can put in a pod? What are the command line arguments that can get passed into a pod? What are the labels of the pod? All aspects of pod. How do you mount volumes inside your pod? Um, how do you configure a pod so that it can talk to some other pod? All these concepts are in the core concepts section. A good number of questions get asked in the configuration part. This is more to do with how to configure the pods that is already running, or how to inject different configurations into your pod at the runtime. So config maps and secrets are the most important topics in here. You can look at all possible scenarios that can get asked, where you have config maps given to you, or you're asked to create a config map and then inject config map into your pod in two ways. Either of those two ways, one is as a mounted volume, or the other one is as environment variable. So same thing holds good for secrets as well. Security context, very important, wherein you can define a pod to run with some capabilities or without some capabilities by configuring a security context. Also, service accounts. How do you ensure that you have a role-based kind of an access for your pod? How to create a service account and associate a pod to use a specified service account? There surely will be a question on multi-container pod. Now this is about how do you put multiple containers within the pod? How do you ensure that if there is some data sharing that has to happen between these two pods, how is it taken care of? There are a lot of aspects of the design patterns and stuff like that, but from a perspective of the exam, it's more to do with how you go about just configuring these two containers in one pod. Right, observability. Yes, there are liveness probes, readiness probes, and loggings. These are the important topics that is a part of the syllabus. How to define a liveness probe, what are the different parameters that you can specify with the liveness probe and the readiness probe. Many times the questions are very straightforward, but sometimes the questions are very tricky. So in the liveness probe, expect a question wherein you're given a probe which is not running for some reason. The pod is not running because something is bad with the pod. So you are asked to go ahead and debug it, and you look at it, and then you see there's a liveness probe that is defined there. And then something is wrong with what is it probing. Maybe it is the port for which it's probing, or something to do with command line argument. It's looking for a file that is not present and stuff like that. Also, logging. There would definitely be a question on how to pick up a log from a specific pod, maybe from a specific container within a pod which has got multiple containers and stuff like that. Pod design. Deployments, yes, there definitely would be a question on deployments, how to perform updates on this deployment using some strategies. What are the different strategies that you can use with different configurations of max surge and max unavailable and stuff like that. How to roll back a deployment if it goes bad, possibly how to uh, also, yes, the jobs and cron jobs, very important. How to go about defining a job or a cron job which can run for a scheduled amount of time. How to ensure that the number of completions and parallelism is set within these jobs. Okay, services and networking. Yes, how do you go about defining services? There's a pod that is already running, or there's a deployment that is already running. How do you expose a service which is available to the outside world, and all the three different kinds of service that is available: the cluster IP, the node port, and load balancing, or the external services that you can expose, possibly using also the ingress controllers. Persistence, definitely there would be a question on persistence. There's more to do with how do you go about defining a persistent volume, how do you get a claim out of this, looking at all aspects of the persistent volume, all the parameters. What is the different mode that will in which you're going to define this persistent volume? Is it to read write many, read write only? What is mount a specific path within your persistent volume or the persistent volume claim. So roughly, that's what would be covered in your curriculum. Now that you know what is there in the syllabus, probably the next question would be, how do I go about preparing for these? Now, for those of you who have been working on Kubernetes, it's a very easy thing. But for someone who doesn't know Kubernetes at all, or is not very comfortable with Kubernetes, or you're just beginning to pick up skills in Kubernetes, which is not a part of your regular work, but you're still interested and want to get a certification, possibly I will kind of let you know how to go about getting those skills. First and foremost, uh, the main prerequisite for understanding Kubernetes is to understand container, any one container technology. Docker is what I would strongly recommend, but if you have any other containers that you're comfortable with, RKT, CRIO, or any other container, that is pretty good enough. I see a lot of people asking me, or coming over to me and asking me to, get them acquainted or run a training program for them on Kubernetes. But when I check with them, they have absolutely no idea about containers. Now that makes understanding Kubernetes very, very difficult and hard, because if you look at the concepts, Kubernetes is nothing but, in a very loose way I can put it, it's a wrapper around your container. It's an orchestration tool that understands a container and it manages your container. So starting from volumes, the port mapping, the way the pods or containers are kept isolated, how to connect them, the ports, all this is the understanding of this is dependent upon your understanding of a container. So please, if at all you're beginning to learn or pick up skills on Kubernetes, don't do that straight away. Go ahead and buy a book or get yourself acquainted a little bit about containers. Docker is what I would prefer. So assuming that you go ahead and pick up some skills on Docker, I would recommend a wonderful book. Um, this is a kind of must buy book. There are e-versions of this available as well. But the whole idea of running, the whole idea of this certification is that it is specific to the version. So you would find probably an older version of the book if it's a PDF file. So uh, I would recommend buy this book, the latest edition of this book. Now, this gives you a very, very nice explanation of the complete Kubernetes tool. What is Kubernetes? What is the reason behind this being built? How does it manage stuff? Not just from an exam perspective, but from a complete understanding perspective. I think it's very, very important to understand all the aspects of Kubernetes before you jumping into the examination part of it. So irrespective of what is there in the syllabus or not, I would recommend that you buy this book, completely go through this book once to understand what is Kubernetes, what are the different objects associated with this, how does it manage such huge applications as such, how is that you can build health probes into it, what are self-healing applications, what is the reason behind Kubernetes being built the way it is. So wonderful book, a must-have kind of a thing. So go ahead and buy this book. Apart from this book, you definitely do not need any other reference material other than the documentation of Kubernetes, which is so very nice and beautiful. So get yourself acquainted with the complete documentation of Kubernetes. Anything that you would want to search in the Kubernetes, have these shortcuts and stuff. Let's say I want to just search for environment from. I want to pull in and I want to pull in maybe a config map or a secret, and I want to take it into environment. So if I search for config map or a volume or something else, I need to know what would be the right kind of keywords to use in order to search. And this documentation is extremely good. So apart from the book, if at all you need to get yourself acquainted with anything else, it is this documentation part of Kubernetes. Nothing more than those two. Now that you have a good book to refer, you have all your basics right. Now go ahead and get your hands dirty. Kubernetes runs very well in a single node cluster. So there's Minikube. You can run this as a single node cluster. Minikube runs beautifully well in Windows as well as in Linux. So go ahead and get your hands as much dirty as you can, trying to run various pods, understanding how our pods build, what is YML, understand the YML basics, because the complete exam is all about writing different YMLs. So understand YML, get yourself acquainted with all parts of running, all the commands that is possible for you to understand just by looking at various use cases that you would find out here. So go ahead, try, get your hands dirty with Minikube, run a lot of exercises with this. Once you're very comfortable with those, there are a bunch of practice exams that is available. So if you just browse through this, there are so many practice exams that is available for you, um, which tells you how exactly you're supposed to run few things very efficiently, or it gives you some challenges and stuff like that. So go ahead, prepare for these kind of questions that is there. Now, all along, I've been telling you, do not take up any course, because still you're very comfortable with this. I would not recommend that you go ahead and sign up for any particular course. So get yourself very much acquainted with all these things. Now, once you're comfortable with all these things, you got your hands dirty, you know different things about the Kubernetes APIs, what are replication controllers, what is replica sets, what is a job, how to define a job, what is a pod, how to mount some volumes inside a pod. Once you have basic understanding of all this thing, now is the time for you to go ahead and sign for um, some training. So there are so many trainings available on the web. If at all you're a big fan of Udemy, there are so many courses available on Udemy. If at all you want to refer to any other trainer that is available, go ahead and sign up for him. But I would not recommend that you sign up for any training unless and until you're very comfortable with the basics of Kubernetes. You understand Kubernetes, you know something about running some of those kubectl commands, and you're pretty confident to understand what happens in a training. Because what usually happens in a CKAD specific training is that the instructor, this happens to me as well whenever I run my training programs, our main focus is to give you as much questions as possible based upon the scenarios that it will happen in an exam. And all along, we kind of assume that you know the basics of Kubernetes, and you will be able to pick up things um, just like that. Now, if at all you're not comfortable with Kubernetes, that's where there's a big communication gap. So, my recommendation: do not sign up for any of those CKAD specific training program unless and until you have very good working knowledge of Kubernetes. You got your hands dirty and you're very comfortable with Minikube. All along, when you're working out some of the exercises, or you're learning from trainer based upon whoever you sign up for, what I would recommend is that start putting up all your learnings in some quick reference guide kind of a thing. Because this is again one other question that keeps my students keep asking to me, because there are two kinds of people, whom I talk to. The one who have a lot of time on their hands and they want to try out something by signing up for these sort of certifications. They can plan well, they can afford to have dedicated time that can they spend on this. But there are always some people who are working somewhere, they're busy, they want to do a certification, but they don't know how much time they can spend on it. They can only spend half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, or a weekend hours on these training topics. Now, if at all you're one of those who cannot afford to spend quality time on this, you would need a quick reference like this. So this is what I train people. I train a lot of people for CKAD exams, and this is what I hand out to my students. So prepare something that is a very quick reference for you. This should have all your learnings, the kubectl commands, a quick reference kind of thing, just to maybe look at few of those topics. Some things like this, how to run a pod, what are the commands for the pod, dry run client, restart never, how to specify an environment variable, how to specify multiple environment variables, how to specify labels. Can the labels have a delimiter as comma, double quote? What is it? Whatever you can think of that you want to have it at a quick reference kind of a thing, start putting them out in a simple YML reference. I mean, simple uh, reference guide. So resource request, limits, anything that catches your eye, because mind you, though people work on Kubernetes, I've been working on Kubernetes for almost 2.5 years on and off in various roles. But the way you prepare for an exam is totally different. You would want to know the exact configuration file, and that too not by not spending too much of your time in trying to find it. Just to give an example, um, let us say, yeah, there are a lot of these stuff like active deadline second. There are a lot of configurations which, when we are really working on some project for the customer, we really do not really remember all these things, or if at all there's a need, we Google search or we put in this configuration, but we forget about this. Now, if these questions come on and off in the exams, you're better off not trying to search for it. So put them in a quick reference where you can look it up and kind of by heart it out, because in the exam you're allowed to open up a tab on the browser and go through the Kubernetes documentation. But how much time you want to spend on searching it, or sometimes even if you know where is it, you have to really spend a lot of time in trying to get to the exact part of the documentation. Now, if you can avoid it, well and good. That is where you would want to put everything in a simple reference, and this can be referred as and when often, how much or often that you would want. All about pod, how to have the resources, commands and arguments, environment variables, security context, service accounts, config map, secret, label, multi-container pod, replica set, deployments, job, all the subtopics that you would see in the exam. Prepare a very, very simple lookup, so that how exactly, let's just give an example, config map. Now, how to define a config map from a file, what are the various options of it, how to inject that inside your pod, what are the different options of config, injecting your config map into your pod, if you want to get them as environment variable versus if you want to get them as volume inside your pod. So all the options as a quick reference guide, just put them out here. And also, any other tips that you would want from all your learnings, put them in a very, very simple quick reference guide. This helps a lot. Okay, few things about the exam procedure. This is where I get a lot of questions as well. How is the exam conducted and stuff like that? So I just want to clarify a few things out here. This exam can be taken from the comfort of your home. Only thing is, you would need a good room with good light, where your face is visible, where you have a webcam. Not necessarily webcam, nobody has webcam these days, but if you have a camera inside your laptop, or kind of built into your laptop, which can be moved around, and then the proctor can look at what is there inside your room, so that there's nobody prompting you inside your room, or what is that you have on your table, where you don't have any headset that you put in. I'm not really sure who can help you out with with the question type of question that get asked, but these are the standard things that they would look at. One thing that again gets asked often is, what happens if the network goes down? What happens if at all there's a power failure? So do not worry. The examination, the timing on your examination would stop at that moment, and then as and when you get reconnected, your examination would continue. Whatever work that you have been doing till that time kind of gets saved, unless and until you really have a bad crash and you cannot recover from the crash. But otherwise, if there is a momentary couple of minutes that gets um, lost because of bad network connectivity, do not worry, you can always connect back. But however, once the exam starts, you're in a little bit of a stress. So any network connections or something doesn't work well, it's always something that you got to worry about. So my advice, book a nice if you have an office space that can be booked, which is nice, clear, has a good bandwidth and has got uninterrupted power supply, go ahead and book it. Otherwise, your home is good as long as your internet connection is pretty fast, and then you have a power backup. The proctors are pretty good. I mean, at least whatever I've heard of, including me, the proctors were good. They do a lot of checking before the exam starts. After that, unless and until um, you engage in some acts which can raise some suspicion to the proctor, they're pretty good. They allow you to take a break. Mind you, if you take a break, you will not your timer doesn't stop. You're allowed to drink water from a clear glass and stuff like that. But believe me, once your exam starts, 2 hour kind of just goes away like nothing. You'll not have time to look at anything else. Um, what else? You're not supposed to wear any watches or fit bands and stuff like that. Uh, and the communication with the proctor is through a chat window, so you don't really have to plug in or wear a earphone to communicate. It's always through a chat window. And of course, you need to have a webcam. External one is better, is what they recommend, but if you have a built-in webcam, that works as well. All right, one other thing that this is again asked by most of my uh, corporate customers who are already working on something, but they always feel that they want to do a certification, but they can never find enough time to do that. So once you're comfortable with all of these and you have a comfort level built in where you think that you can go ahead and sign up for the exam, go ahead and just do it. It's around $300 with some discounts on and off. Keep looking out for these discounts. So unless and until you go ahead and sign up for an exam, you can never get serious. So go ahead and sign up for the exam. Once you have thing when you're paid around 200 or $250, you pretty sure would get serious about it. Um, the validity for taking up your exam is an year, and you get a retake. But believe me, you shouldn't really want to take a retake. First examination, first attempt only, you should be able to clear it off. Um, all right, so that being said, let me talk a little bit about the UI. The UI is the UI for the exam is a little tricky UI. In case you've used this playground called Katakoda, is it? Yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm spelling it, if I'm pronouncing it right. Katakoda. The UI for the exam is something very similar to this UI. Um, you have a kind of a terminal that is coming out here. The questions onto your left side. On the right, you will find some controls where there's a notepad, very important tool. In case you miss out some questions, you probably want to jot it down in your notepad. If you want to have a window where you want to type in some things for the proctor and stuff like that, there's a chat window. A lot of controls are on the top, but there is going to be one terminal. You will not see multiple terminals like these or a plus sign and stuff. There's going to be only one terminal and a question window. The question window probably is the right size of the question window that is going to be there. Sometimes the questions are pretty big. Each questions big in the sense it's pretty lengthy. So believe me, when the exam starts, it'll take at least 3-4 minutes for you to really understand the UI. And one thing, in case you worked only on Minikube, that's pretty much sufficient for you to go ahead and attempt the exam. But in the examination, you would be given at least 2 or 3 clusters for you to work upon. Now, which cluster? The question may be relating to different clusters, but good thing is right below every question, the first thing that you would see is the command that allows you to get into the right cluster. K config and whatever is the command that is there. All that you got to do is just hover over it, copy it, and paste it. Okay, but ensure that you are always on that particular config for which the question is meant for. And there will be multiple nodes as well in your cluster. Sometimes the question will be a little tricky where you're supposed to copy some files from one node to the other node and stuff like that. So you would need some Linux skills in order to do that. All right, but UI very important. Um, it's like this. It's pretty much similar, very similar to this UI. So only one terminal window, which people do not really like, at least the Linux experts do not like. So what is recommended is that you install something called as a Tmux, which is a terminal emulator. Now, because there are times when you would want to remove or delete some parts, and some parts may take some time to get deleted. There are always different configurations that you can run so that the part gets deleted quickly. But assuming that you cannot, or if you can, if you think that you're better off by having a multiple emulator, go ahead for it. Otherwise, I don't remember ever using a terminal emulator when I wrote my exam. Neither have any of my students complain about the terminal being only one kind of inhibiting for them. But nonetheless, if at all you want a terminal emulator, go ahead for it. The way to the commands to install a terminal emulator is this way. This is what needs to be done on your terminal. So sudo apt-get update. I'm really not sure how long this would take because I've never tried this on the terminal window, but you can do that. And sudo apt-get install tmux. Now this will install a terminal emulator, and the command after that is pretty simple. So let me just show you with my regular terminal window. Mind you, this is not what you would see. You would see a katakoda kind of a thing, but here, assuming that you installed terminal emulator, the way to power off tmux or to way to bring up terminal emulator is using this. Now this is a window where I feel that I would need to split the plane vertically. So what is the command? Control B followed by the percentage sign. So let me try that. Control B, and where is my percentage time? Yeah. So now the window got split. Control B and double quote will split it this way. How to move across different terminals? Control B up arrow will take me there. Control B left arrow will take me here. Control B right arrow. Control B down arrow. So what typically happens if you're running something here, now the pods are running, or you don't know what is a pod, or the pod is not getting deleted, your terminal is not coming out of the command, that's where you would want to split here and do something more here. But in my opinion, because this terminal window is pretty small, as because on the left side you'll have the questions. So if you want to split it up much more smaller, your take. I would not recommend that you do it, but that's a possibility. The commands and everything is there in my in one of my um, GitHub repository. Probably I will kind of give you a preview of this and put up the link for my GitHub repository, but the commands are pretty simple. However, one other important thing that I want you guys to remember is this. um, while editing your YML files, there's always problems with the indenting. The indentation is most important. So this is the recommended indentation that you would want for your Vim editor. Okay, so let me just show you that. Oops, not this one. As in when you get a terminal, do this vi.vimrc and auto cmd file type YAML set local. This is for auto indenting. ST is for I forgot what it is for, but it's something to do with the tab. STS equal to 2, SW equal to 2, and expand tab. Okay, this has got to do with all your tabs, converting your tabs into spaces. Tab should ideally get translated into two spaces. So this is the configuration that you would want to do. TS is tab space, STS is soft tab space. Oh, TS was it? Okay, sorry, my bad. Let me just see that. Did I say TS? Okay, the ST, get confused with this. Okay, so this is the configuration that you would want to put in a Vim RC. Vim RC is the configuration file for your VI editor, and I would recommend quickly try out try out any one YML file and see if at all you see this. This is the, let's say you try something like this. The auto indenting part is this flow where as soon as you type something, if you hit a new line character, the prompt comes down to the, in line with whatever is your previous YML element. Now this is a wonderful thing to have if at all you don't want to keep on pressing the tabs and stuff like that. This is a very, very good time saver. However, mind you, with the auto indenting thing, as in when you paste something from a terminal, from other browser or any other window, sometimes the formatting can go bad. So if that is the case, before you paste something, the simple command colon set paste. This is what you would want to type in, and then insert and then paste whatever you have copied from some other window. This works well, but this is the preferred configuration that I would recommend, because the tab spaces creates huge problems, and if at all your YML file becomes too big, every time pressing a tab is easier than moving spaces and stuff like that, and you would want your tab space to move only two spaces. So this is a definite configuration setting that I would recommend. All right, some more possibly tips. um, alias k equal to kubectl. There are so many aliases that people recommend. If you can remember all of them and get them, that's good, but for me, k is all that you would need. Okay, now I have my local cluster running minikube. The version should be exactly same as the version that you're going to try out. Okay, sorry, one other thing. What I would recommend is, in case you are trying out a lot of things on your Windows box is pretty good enough till you're 80-90% confident of your exam. So once you get closer to your exams, what I would recommend is get yourself a Linux box. If not, sign up for any of those cloud providers or even use Katacoda. uh, get yourself more acquainted with the Linux box and try out all the commands, because there's always a difference between Linux and Windows. And the exam being Linux, you're better off trying all these on a Linux box. All right, so I have a Minikube that is running on Linux Ubuntu, and this is the version 1.8 of my kubectl, and this is the version 1.8 of my server. All right, now, lot of commands that you would um, run starts off with the run commands. Okay, run hyphen hyphen help. You'll find all that you would need in order to launch a pod. So the image, the environment variable, the labels, anything and everything that you would need is all there in the uh, Kubernetes run command. Most importantly, this guy, dry run is equal to client, and then hyphen o, and YML is something that you would always want to remember. All right, now all the exams would refer to one or two publicly available popular images that they want you to power your pods with. Busybox is one such image. Bash is other image. So try all your exams, as much as exercise as possible using Busybox. Now let me quickly show you how to run a Busybox pod. K run Busybox hyphen hyphen image equal to Busybox hyphen hyphen restart equal to never hyphen hyphen dry hyphen run equal to client hyphen OYML. Now these commands you would possibly need to have it by heart, because these are all the basic commands that you would need to do, and then once you have a YML like this, you're supposed to go ahead and modify it. One common thing that gets asked in all the exams is that you are on the default namespace. You're always asked to work on a completely different namespace. Possibly the namespace is already given for you. Maybe there are pods running there. You're asked to create one more pod. You're supposed to create a service for a pod that is running there, or some stuff like that. So when you have a namespace which is different, whatever you do out here in terms of specifying a namespace here or something, that doesn't work. So be aware of all this. Namespace, other namespace or something like that. Whatever you give here, um, namespace or hyphen n, sorry, my bad. Okay, whatever namespace and stuff like that, whatever arguments that you specify here would never get picked up. So be cognizant to that fact. And if at all you want to get into some namespace, okay, there's a very simple command which again I want you to kind of remember. Kconfig hyphen help. Okay, kconfig, and you will see this set config, sorry, set context. Kconfig set hyphen context. All right, hyphen current and hyphen namespace. So kconfig set context hyphen current hyphen names equal to something, whatever you would want to. This is the command that you were better off by kind of by hearting. Now this would allow you to move your context into that particular namespace and go ahead and try whatever you want to do in that namespace. And later when you want to come back, namespace equal to default is what you would want to um, um, what is the option that you would want to give in. All right, very important command. Please remember it. One other thing, how to bring down a pod quickly, how to ensure that your pod gets deleted quickly. So let me run a pod, run Busybox hyphen image equal to Busybox hyphen restart equal to never. All right, one other thing, this way in which you pass parameters and arguments to your pod is very important. um, it takes some time to get your head around it as to what is the argument and what is the command. Sometimes the questions would be that pass a specific command and pass a specific argument, but if you try to run something like this, you're not really sure, what is this passing as an argument. Or let's say I'll just show you the pod is being created. Let me just check the dry run output of this. Dry run equal to client hyphen OYML. If you see this, though I've said hyphen sh hyphen c, all of them gets passed as arguments. So if at all your question is more towards have a command as sh and then argument as something else, you have to be very careful about that. Because I've had some students complaining that though they did everything right, some of these answers were not picked up correctly. Because if the questions are very specific about the argument being something else and the command being something else, um, you'll have to be very careful about it. All right, now let me see if the pod is running. Okay, oops. Okay, describe PO busy box. Terminated error 127. My network. Oops. Okay, let me check again. Oops, this is bad. This is small s. Yeah, these are some of the other things that you got to worry about. So in the small s, capital S, a space, a double quote with a command, how to pass let's say numerical value into as an argument. Try all that you can. And as I said, Busybox is a common question that gets asked because most of the pods are asked to be powered with either Busybox, Bash, Nginx for sure. Nginx is other image that you're better off uh, exploring. All right, now let me see if the pod is up and running. Yeah, the pod is up and running. Now, how do I delete this pod quickly? As I said before, sometimes for whatever reason in environment specific stuff, the pods do not get deleted quickly. In case you want a pod to get deleted quickly, delete po hyphen now works, but sometimes that doesn't work. Hyphen force grace hyphen period equal to 0. Busybox. Okay, so this is the command that you're better off by hearting. Hyphen hyphen force with an option and then giving a grace period. One other very useful command is the explain command. Now many times you think you know something about a configuration but cannot really recollect what exactly was it. Was it a capital C or a small c? Active deadline seconds, was it D capital, S capital? Those are the times when you really do not want to go back to the documentation and look at it in order to get the exact syntax of something. So K explain, let me give a small example. Po hyphen hyphen recursive. This is the command which gives you a complete listing of whatever Kubernetes object that you want. Now I think I need to get some information about some timing stuff where there is something to do with seconds, but I don't know what exactly is the configuration. Maybe if pod takes more time to run, I just want it to be shut on within that time. Now what was that? I don't really recollect that. So grep hyphen I and let's say seconds. All right, if you see this, all the parameter that comes out with matching seconds, because I've done a hyphen I, so all this gets listed out here very clearly. Now this was the option that I'm looking at, active deadline seconds. I got it quickly. All right, now there are so many other things that that you would want to grab out of this stuff, and sometimes you may want to, let us say, I want a liveness probe. So I just do a liveness probe. I want to know the configurations for the liveness probe. Okay, now if you do this, you would possibly see only the first line of wherever it kind of gets the liveness probe. So what I want to do is I want some um, 10 lines before and after kind of a thing. If you see here, now it very clearly tells you what is this liveness probe. Is it an exec more like a command thing, command? What is the failure threshold if at all you're passing instead of exec? An http probe, http get, host, port and path. Okay, all that you would need specifically for if you know few things, but you need a quick help instead of looking at documentation, use the explain command. One other stuff, k k explain deploy. Okay, sorry, one more thing. A lot of these Kubernetes APIs have got short names. Deployment is shortened to deploy. RS is replica set. RC is replication controller. Okay, you don't have replication controllers anymore. But there are so many short forms. PV is a persistent volume. PVC is persistent volume claim. So get to know all that, and so that you can use that effectively, so that you save some time. K explain deploy, recursive. um, I know the deployment, I can create a deployment, but I need to have a strategy. I need to know what exactly is a strategy, because I think I want to do a rolling update kind of a thing. Grep hyphen I hyphen let's say C5, and what was that, a rolling update. All right, there you go. Very clearly it tells you, okay, rolling update, these are the parameters to pass: max surge, max unavailable. So explain command, very useful command, very simple command. If at all you think you know the APIs pretty well, some small thing that you want to double clarify without really going back to the documentation page, use the explain command. There are a lot more tips that I can possibly give you, but I don't want to get into too many of them. I'll save it for my um, for another session. But K create is another command. K create, let's say I want to create a deployment. I want to give an image for my deployment. Image is equal to nginx hyphen dry run equal to client hyphen OYML. Um, deploy, my deploy, some name for my deployment. All right. So create command is a wonderful command where you can go ahead and create few things, but you cannot create a lot many things in this. Deployment is something that you can easily create. If you say create hyphen help, it will tell you what all it can create: jobs, cron jobs, deployment, quota, role binding, secret. Most of these things can be used and can be created using a create command. So very useful stuff for you to kind of remember. One of the last thing, uh, replace command. K replace. There are times when you're asked to go ahead and modify something from a running pod. Now, few of the parameters in the pod can be modified on the fly with an edit command, but sometimes you really cannot you cannot recreate that. You cannot really replace a lot of arguments, a lot of parameters of a running pod. So that is where you would need a replace stuff. So K replace, Kubernetes replace, um, some YML file, whatever, wherever you got some reference of a running pod, and then you made some changes to this, and then hyphen force. This will ensure that whatever running pod that is there, based upon the YML file, whatever modifications is done, it will try to replace that running pod. If required, it will even restart that pod, or either bring down one pod and kind of bring up another pod in its place. So replace, very useful command to know. Well, I can go on and on with a lot many tips, but I'll kind of stop that for now. And I kind of wind it up with one last tip, which is about how do I kind of go about answering the questions? What is there any strategy behind that and stuff like that? So, from my experience and from whatever I heard from my students, there are two kinds of question that kind of typically comes up. One, which is a pretty straightforward question, which is all about go ahead and create a pod. Let this be the image name for the pod. Let this be in this namespace. Let it open up this particular port. Let it be tagged with this and stuff like that. Where it's very easy for you to just go ahead and create the pod, and also not just create the pod, verify your answer. So, in my opinion, these straightforward questions, just go for it. Though each of these questions have a weightage, some people, you know recommend you to come back to these questions later on, because if the weightage is less, they want you to go ahead and uh, solve those questions where the weightages are more. But you never know what would be the question that is coming up next, and whether it's easy for you or not. So my personal advice: if at all a question is straightforward, very straightforward, just go ahead and create a deployment. Let it be have so many replicas, and you have done this day in day out, and you know how to do it. Just go ahead and answer it. Some of the questions are really tricky, because this would need you to kind of debug some things, or really kind of scratch your brains out. You'd possibly love this question, or would enjoy this question if at all you are asked under some other context, not in the context of the exam. So one kind of question that I can relate to without really breaking any of my non-disclosure agreement is like, uh, there are three pods that were given, in and they were in a different namespace altogether. The pods are all running fine. Two pods are supposed to, the pod 1 and 2 are supposed to communicate with pod 3, but for some reason they're not able to communicate. Can you go ahead and fix it? Now, that was the question. Now, when you look at it, the pods are running. Looks pretty simple. What do? I have to just go ahead and create a network policy, maybe, just to ensure that there's no network policy that is already created, which is denying everything. So I would go ahead and create a network policy. But in the question, as I said, the question box is pretty small one onto the left, like this. If you hover around, if you come down here, somewhere down here, hint and some more information would be given, and there it says that you're not supposed to do any modifications to the running pod. You're not supposed to touch the pod. All right, that's okay. Let me go ahead and create a network policy. Somewhere down below, a hint that says no. The network policies are also created for the pod. Now, you in that in the heat of moment, you really not figure out what is that needs to be done. Then you try to kind of break your head and says, okay, the pod is there, the network policy is there. I'm not supposed to touch the pod. I'm not even supposed to create another network policy. Now you go ahead and check all the network policies. Now the network policies may be specifically defined for that particular namespace. Now go ahead and check that. I mean, what I meant to say is, bottom line, these questions may be little tricky, and you may not be very comfortable to kind of look at it straight away. If such a question get asked somewhere in the beginning, park it. You have a notepad, go ahead and park the question and come back and address it later on. All right, to kind of bring it to a conclusion, that question was more to do with labeling. The pods network policy are all tied up to the label. So all that it was supposed to, I mean, all that I was supposed to do in that question was possibly add some label specific things which were missing, but these labels were already specified in the network policy. But since the pods didn't have the label, it was not applicable to the pod. So without really modifying the pod or stopping the pod, I can just modify the label and ensure that I address the question. Well, that's my tip. Easy questions, just go for it. Whatever is the weightage, doesn't matter. You don't want to come back to that later. When you're fresh, just go ahead and solve that. In case you hit upon any issues while even working on a very, very easy question, the YML can be very tricky at times. If at all you look at all the pod affinity required during schedule, not required during that, and labels and stuff like that, copy and paste. If you're not very comfortable with the VI editor, though the question looks very, very simple, you may end up spending more time on those questions. So if it's more than 4 or 5 minutes for a simple straightforward question, just park it. Just park it. Don't even come to that. Just move on. Maybe there's a better and easy question somewhere down the line for you. I can go on and on and on, but let me just stop here and conclude this. I hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions regarding the CKAD, or if you need any more information, kindly drop in a comment and I will try to get to it as soon as I can. Thanks for your time, and you guys have a great day.